Now here is a video that is long overdue. I already tried and shoot this once. I actually did it on a live stream, but I really didn't like the way that it turned out. This is an HP Pavilion model 6648C. Video light's not really doing a good job. I think Night Shot would do a better job. Actually, it does. Funny that, huh? Courtesy of If You Like Good Ideas. I guess it was just sitting around doing nothing, and we basically traded. I gave him an HP Pavilion 541C that I really had no use for, and got this instead. Now, why would I trade away an Athlon XP for this? Because this system, for those of you that don't know, bases itself on an AMD K62 microprocessor. Now, the AMD K62 CPU is basically a competitor to the Intel Pentium 2, and its big feature was the so-called 3D Now instruction set, which was a competitor to Intel's SSE, or Streaming Simmed Extensions. Try saying that 3 times fast. Of course, as we all know, 3D Now really never took off. Instead, SSE was the one that became the market giant, even though AMD did come out with theirs first. Well, either way, it's basically a glorified Pentium MMX. And so that still begs the question, why on earth would I trade an Athlon XP for a K62? Well, believe it or not, through all of the machines that I've had come through here, and there have been lots of them, I have never personally owned anything prior to this that had a K62 CPU. Oh, sure, I've worked on them for other people. If I ever get back into my work system exploration series, there are a few of them that show up there as well. Those could be mine. Actually, I found out that just before all of the, well, as of the making of this video, all of the current events took place. A lot of those machines, in fact, I think the very most of them are going to end up being on the disposal block. But either way, this is the first one, and I decided that, you know, I didn't really want that Athlon XP system because I really had no use for it. Well, this was certainly interesting. Either way, it's as I said, I can't speak today. This is an HP Pavilion 6648C. Interesting that they put the bill of materials on there. There you go, there's some information. Here's the power supply, which I believe is a non-standard size. Or, well, it probably is actually a standard size, but it's not ATX. I can tell you that much. It's a lot smaller than ATX, so Lord help you if that ever fails. There's your audio connections up here. Line out, line in, and a microphone jack, which has a piece of paper on it. For some reason, I really don't know why. Maybe they all did at some point to color code them. The system does not follow the PC99 standard, as you can probably guess. Probably tell. And PS2 ports, a single USB, probably 1.0, serial, parallel, VGA, and that is it. There is nothing else on board. So if you wanted anything else, well, I mean, there's sound, but if you wanted anything else, you had to install expansion cards, and you can see that there is actually an Ethernet card there, branded as Ovis Link. If I remember right, I've got one of those that has a Realtek chipset on it. Probably a pretty decent card. You can go ahead and have another look at the front here. You can see a floppy drive. This would be another 3.5-inch bay for something. Probably a zip drive. There's probably supposed to be a little cover over this single USB port in the front, but I don't have that cover. It's not really a big deal anyway. And we have a CDRW. Alright, let's go ahead and pop the cover and have a look inside. Now, I realize that I glanced over 3D Now pretty quickly, and I probably should offer a little bit more of an explanation of it, even though I'm not really familiar with all the technical underpinnings of it. I've done a little bit of reading here, and I think I can give you a pretty decent explanation. You see, back when 3D Now and the K62 were brand new, the thing of the day was 3D graphics, 3D gaming, 3D anything. CAD, you name it. If it was 3D, it was big. And at the time, three-dimensional stuff required heavy use of the floating point unit on the CPU, or in Intel parlance, the x87 stuff. Now, technically that's not totally true, because the 486DX has its own built-in math coprocessor, so there is no 487, and there wasn't a 487 anyway, because the SX, what you would do, the so-called 487 chip, was just a 486DX with a couple extra pins on it and some modifications so it could disable the onboard processor. Anyway, that's not the point. And the Pentium, of course, has its own built-in math coprocessor, as does the K6. I believe the K5 as well before that, but either way, K6 certainly. But the K6's math coprocessor was kind of a piece of junk, and it was really slow, especially compared to equivalent Intel chips, which again at the time was the Pentium 2. The Pentium 2 walked all over this thing in terms of floating point performance. So AMD's response was to come up with the so-called 3D Now extensions, which are basically streaming SIMD extensions, or SIMD, single instruction multiple data, basically to, again, simplify things a little bit, but working with vectors for 3D stuff. Again, it's a little more technical than I want to get into this video, but the idea was to use the CPU and these SIMD instructions to boost the performance, and it worked. But the problem is that programs had to be designed for 3D Now in order to really take advantage of it. Oh sure, there were some instructions that could work regardless without modification of any program, but if you really wanted to take advantage of it, you had to write it for 3D Now. I believe the same is technically true of SSE as well, since a lot of the storage commands for SSE require you to explicitly write it into your program, but SSE was the one that took off. Either way, we'll go ahead and we'll pop the cover on this, which is unfortunately, I really am not fond of this design, but it's one of these. I thought I could get this off with one hand. Well, I guess I can't. I'll be right back. And it's one of these AT-style systems with the full U-shaped case. I hate these things. These things are really, really, really irritating. But either way, here's the system. You really can't see a whole lot. And let me see something interesting here. What is this? Oh, this goes to the audio. So I wonder if there is a connection on the motherboard for that, or if maybe you had to have an add-in sound card in order to make use of that. That's kind of odd. But there are a few things that might be of interest in here. Go ahead and turn on the video light. These are front panel connections, and it looks like this one actually uses a separate... No, I take that back. It looks like it might be all one piece for the front panel, so that if you wanted to replace the motherboard, you might be in for a little world of hurt. There's a single ISA slot in the bottom, and 2 PCI slots. This, of course, predates AGP, and definitely predates PCI Express. Let's see. Can we get these ribbons out of the way to reveal what that ancillary chip is? I think it's just a tracer anyway. This has an SIS chipset, which I'm sure is going to generate quite a bit of fan mail. But back in the day, especially the 486, the SIS chipset was actually fairly decent. The only thing that it's really not good for is graphics under Linux. There's an onboard squeaker can right there. You can just see it barely poking up behind those wires. There's your network card. Now I wonder if this is actually running with the chip that I think it is, Realtek. I see a Realtek logo on it, so I'm guessing yes. I don't know how much RAM is installed. There are 3 slots, which was typical of the time, and we can't really see the CPU in there. In fact, I really can't even see much at all. But there's a very dirty CPU socket. You can see it right there. And underneath that is, of course, the microprocessor. I'm sorry, I'm starting to really wonder about this. Why they would bother to include CD audio and front panel, or I guess rear panel audio, when there isn't even a sound card in the computer at all. It's very odd. Unless maybe there was a sound card at one point and it's been removed. Which would be a shame. I don't know if you could actually somehow... You probably could actually rewire this for use with any old Sound Blaster or any other sound card. This hard drive is a Quantum Failball. I can't actually read it. LCT, I think is what that says on it. What size is it? Can we actually tell? It's an HP original, 20 gigabytes. I think it's an HP original. No, it might not be. I don't see an HP spares logo on it anywhere. But anyway, it's your floppy drive. There it is. It looks like if you wanted to add something to the lower slot, you would actually have to use a special rail. And of course, I don't have that, so I guess I won't be adding anything to that. Anyway, there's a chip underneath that heatsink back there, probably the video processor. I don't know what kind of video this would have. Basically, as long as it's not chromatic research or something equally as annoying, I really don't care. But I really don't think that it's chromatic research, because I usually only saw those in gateways and compacts. But anyway, this is an Asus motherboard. It looks like a P55 VM. So I almost wonder, actually, if this is the original motherboard. Probably is. Actually, yeah, it would have to be, because when you turn it on, it boots up to an HP logo. So I'm going to plug this hard drive back in, because I did unplug it, so I could do some work cleaning off the case, because one of the front panel latches is right behind that connector. This thing is really cramped. HP systems were always really cramped, right up until the Pentium 4 days. In fact, even during the Pentium 4 days, they had some real problem with systems overheating, because they were just way too packed. It was way too dense. But anyway, so I'll put the side panel back on. I'll try and get some slot blanks for this, and we'll hook it up and see what it happens to do. And I've gone ahead and put the slot blanks in place. You can see down there, we just have the one card. You don't need anything else. But I also just noticed this here. There's some screws covering some lips here. It looks like that actually would be a removable motherboard tray, which is very interesting. Or at least a semi-removable motherboard tray. This here might be a problem, but you might actually be able to take the motherboard out that way, which would certainly be very interesting. Okay, let's go ahead and hook this thing up and see it run. I haven't done anything with it. It's been kind of a running joke, you know, which one of us is going to get to their new HP computer the fastest. I think I might win that one, though. Well, that's not quite what I had in mind while I was setting this up, but it'll do. I was hoping it'd be small enough that I could stack it upright on top of that machine, but it's not. Just barely. I hope I have my KVM set right, and I also hope the power is going to work, but here we go! Might replace that hard drive. Yep, KVM is set right. And of course it needs a CMOS battery. Should have looked into that while I... Oops. Is the keyboard working? It's not responding to my keyboard. Give me a minute. Well, I'll tell you, it definitely kind of helps when your keyboard is actually plugged into your KVM switch. Not sure how it came unplugged, but it did. See if I can skip the memory test here, since I presume that's what it's doing. And it wants me to check the date and time. Well, don't mind if I do. So we'll do that. 512 megabytes of memory, so that's not too bad. So I'll go ahead and I'll set this up to my liking. And then we'll go ahead and see what it boots into. Although I think I already know. I've already played around with this. As I said, I think I mentioned I've already shot this video. I did this live on a Lloyd radio broadcast, but I really just don't like the way that it came out, so I'm doing it again. This is actually a fairly fast K62, 550 megahertz. Be one of the later ones. Okay, we'll see if the camera is any more happier now about recording. I just ran a cleaning tape through it. But set that all up. Let's exit saving changes. System should reboot itself. Expanding possibilities. I think this is pretty much the same BIOS that's on the 3260. Might take a while to test all the RAM. check the floppy drive. It'll beep, because it's concluded, and then it'll boot to the hard drive. It's already running Debian. If I remember right, this was part of the so-called turd cluster. Unfortunately, since that was a high availability setup, there really isn't anything that is on this system that's interesting to look at. So I'll probably go get my Debian disk, since I know that Debian will run on this at least. And we will install that and hope that a GUI will actually run on this hardware. Because I do have something in mind for this, which is why I put it there, and it's not just going to go back into the closet. Yep, this is certainly a member of that particular high availability cluster. And I remember breaking into this system. So, yeah, there we go. There you can see that's when I happened to do it. And if we have a look here, it's only about 16% of it used. So I'm going to go ahead and get my Debian disk. I only have Debian Stretch. Hopefully Stretch will actually run on this, but I guess we'll find out. Alright, I bought a pack of these Sony CDRWs a while back, and 650 megabytes isn't really much, but it is certainly enough for a Debian boot CD. This is probably a fool's errand. Oh. Come on. Ah, this is going to be fun. When all else fails, put the disk in there manually. We just say shut the computer off, or eject the tray, shut the computer off, and then put the disk in. Hopefully it will actually boot to it. Of course, I'm assuming that the drive works. For all I know, it could be dead. Skip the memory test. Maybe. Or maybe it'll just do nothing. Give me a minute. Well, it's a good thing this has a removable motherboard tray, because HP, in their infinite stupidity, decided to put screws in both sides of this optical drive, which is evidently not working. So I went to go replace it, pull the screws that I can see out, and can't get the drive out. So I'll tell you what. I took the screws out of that side. I am not putting them back, because that is ridiculous. I hate it when people put screws on both sides of the drive. It drives me nuts. You'll forgive the slight pun there. So let's continue with this. Okay, here we are again. And this time it's actually working. We'll go for the graphical install, because I'm a glutton for punishment. And we'll see if it'll work. Probably not. Hence why I use a CDRW, so if I have to go choose a different distribution, well, I haven't wasted a disk for no reason. So I'll come back in probably about 400 years once that's booted up. So I'm sure it's not going to do too well on this particular system. At least I hope I've got it hooked up to the network, because it is a net install. After all, yeah, it's hooked up. Alright. Well, that's about what I really anticipated happening. We'll see if we can find an older version that's still supported. Okay, so I pretty much gave up on trying to reinstall Linux on this, so I'm just going to use the existing Debian 8. Unfortunately, you can't really use anything newer than that if you want Debian, and finding something that will run on this architecture, because it doesn't have the cmove instruction, it's a 586 class CPU, well, the number of those that are out there is pretty low. I mean, you could probably use something like Slackware or Gentoo, and maybe when Debian 8 runs out of support in a couple of months, I will actually do that. But, for right now, this will have to do. I just finished installing the GUI. See if this works without a reboot. Yeah, now I'm going to have to probably deal with that. Reboot the system and see what it does. Okay, I had to actually install Xorg, but let's try it again. See what it happens to do. And there's a lot of graphical corruption. Something tells me it's not really working totally correctly. So, give me just a second and I'll come back. Alright, let's ramp this video up. It's gone on long enough. To say that none of it has gone according to plan would be a major understatement. But it is finished. I just heard that floppy seek there. Oh. I have a floppy in the drive. As you can see, we're not running Windows 98 anymore. We're running Windows 2000. I couldn't get Windows 98 to read the floppy drive. Which is very weird because it works under everything else. As you can see, it's running just fine. Go ahead and have a look here. Everything is working as intended. And it just worked out of the box. I didn't even need to install any drivers or anything like that. So it all just works. There is actually no audio on this machine. It would have presumably come with a specialized card. So, that's pretty much it. Thank you for watching. If you have any comments, feel free to leave them down below. And this is CP666 signing off. Hope to see you next time. Till then.